Well then, let's leave the stage to Alex, who will talk about RAL implementation in PeakRDL.
All right, thank you. So yeah, I'm Alex Mykyta, and today I'm going to tell you about a new tool that I just put together called PeakRDL-PyRAL. Now, I understand that not everyone here might know what PeakRDL is and what that's all about, so I'm going to just do a quick introduction in that, and then I'll jump into the tool I'll mainly focus on, which is PyRAL. So first off, we want to talk about what is CSR automation, and CSR stands for Control Status Registers, and these are anything you have in an SoC, register files in your SoC, anything that's accessible through a memory map. Control status registers is pretty self-explanatory there, and that's your hardware-software interface. Now, CSR automation is the process of getting the register space into like a dry process, so don't repeat yourself. So you have a single source of truth, which is the specification, and then from that, you generate a bunch of stuff. And the whole point here is that you're not manually creating these things, you're generating them using some kind of tooling. So whether you're generating your RTL from the specification, test models, UVM, software abstraction layers, whether that's C headers or a PyRAL, and then other like packaging files like IPExact and documentation. So this is really all great, and having worked on PeakRDL for a while now, I've learned that in the industry a lot of people tend to have the habit of creating this tool in a vacuum and reinventing things over and over and over again. So before you try to invent this again, I would say, sounds great. Use systemrdl, that's your spec format. And then the tool chain is PeakRDL, and that's the thing that we're talking about here. So a little bit about systemrdl, if you're not familiar with it. It's a pretty lightweight, human writable language. Contrast to other spec languages, like some people will make it a CSV file or YAML file or anything like that. Like those are okay, but here we have a standards back, like a Celera-backed standard that is like industry standard. A lot of people are using it, and it has all the things you kind of want. You know, you can define registers, you can define register offsets, fields within those registers. You can ascribe access policies, whether it's readable, writable, and then a bunch of other things that I don't have time to go through in this presentation, like counters, interrupts, and all kinds of more complex behavior that let you focus more on your design rather than implementing this register block by hand. The other half of this is, so that's your language. So use that. It's a great language. It's been around for quite a bit. Now, PeakRDL is the tooling that I've built around this language. So PeakRDL primarily is a command line interface tool. So you write PeakRDL, a subcommand, and then you export whatever you want from your spec. And the architecture of this looks kind of like this. This is more conceptual. On the left-hand side, we have RDL files go in. It gobbles it up. It parses, compiles, elaborates them, does some validation to make sure you don't have silly things like two registers that land on the same address or some kind of overlaps or all kinds of semantic checks like that you would expect from such a tool. And then what it pops out on the right-hand side is basically this internal representation. It's a model of your register map. And then we go and export two things. Since I recognize that a lot of people still want to control their own destinies in this, PeakRDL is very heavily plug-in forward. So for the input path, we can have like foreign language imports. IPExact is one of them. I've had people import, I built an import for a Word document parser, which was a horrific prior standard that I had used. So the world is your oyster here. And again, other implies you can write your own and kind of plug into the system. And then similarly on the exporter side, you can generate all kinds of stuff. So RTL, UVM, HTML reports for documentation, IPExact, C headers, and there's a bunch out there that people are already building. So really extensible, really useful. So great, now you're all PeakRDL experts. So here we go. I've put together a new subtool called PeakRDL-PyRAL. And this was partly motivated because of a need that I had at work. But also I've been kind of mulling over building this for a while. And this conference has been a really good motivator for that because I submitted the abstract for this talk before I put any Git commits into my repo. So, but it works. So, so this was just released on PyPy last week or earlier this week. And so here we go. So first off, what is a RAL? In case you're not familiar with what that is, we'll kind of talk about why Python and why you want a RAL. So why Python is pretty obvious. Python is quite ubiquitous. You're going to encounter it in any of your Silicon bring-up activities, testing, you have cocotb. And then in my particular situation, I started seeing it being used actually in embedded software, which was like, oh, cool, I can use Python like the full stack. So that motivated me to build this. So without a RAL, you probably would have written some code like this. So we have this abstraction. We've just created a small abstraction. We have a change mode, and it takes in some integer. And if you read this, you might look at it and say, oh yeah, I kind of see what's going on. We're reading a register, we're masking a value out, or masking the old value, and then ORing in bitwise the new value, and with some shifts and bit fiddling and stuff like that, and then you write it back. So pretty standard read, modify, write. And then some curmudgeon will tell you, hey, you know what, that's not great. Like we should, every magic number deserves a name, so we can do better. So sure, okay, we give some names, and then we replace it. But is that really better? I think one critical thing here is that we've forgotten that we're using Python, and this is not C. We've lost our way. Like we really ought to be using the true features of Python for this. So PeakRDL-PyRAL is kind of the step in that direction. So PyRAL has a few layers of abstraction just to kind of make this scalable. First off, there's the hardware. This is the stuff that you've already built. This is in Silicon. This might be in your FPGA. And on top of that, we have the hardware I/O layer. And that's just kind of a name I made up for it. So this is essentially the layer that describes how you interact with the hardware. Specifically, how do I do a read operation? How do I do a write operation? Whether that's an nmapped device, a JTAG debugger, a gRPC call to some remote server, like that's where that abstraction lives. And now we know how to read, write 32 or 16-bit registers or so on and so forth. And then the last layer, this is what this tool generates, is the register abstraction layer. And what this ends up being is a structured API that then you can put your software on top of it, your application software or your test code or whatever, and manipulate it in a really fun way and it's intuitive. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. First off, we're going to create kind of a fictional FOSSI device. And I have 3 registers here. There's a control register with a few settings. Note that on line number 4, there's that mode field that we manipulated manually before. Status register, and then we have an array of registers because sometimes that comes up in designs. Arrays are really useful to get some structured stuff described. And we run it through PeakRDL-PyRAL, so that's the command line tool that you're seeing, PeakRDL, and then the subtool you select it by name. You give it in green, there's the fossi.rdl, that's the input file. And just to make things prettier, we want to add a suffix to it. So there's a rename flag, you can rename it to something a little bit more intuitive, and then we output it into a couple files. So we get a Python file, great, and some other things we'll talk about later. Well, this is pretty easy to set up now. So now we have a register abstraction layer. We import it, so import fossi.ral on line 3. We create an instance of it using this little getRal helper function. And then let's just say hypothetically we're in a lab environment, we want to connect it to a JTAG device. So we connect it to a JTAG via OpenOCD. So maybe there's some debug server running and that binds to localhost in that port. And then we attach it, we bind it to the RAL. So now we're basically just telling the RAL, hey, if you need to do a read or write, this is how you get to that. So how does that look? Pretty intuitive. Okay, so we want to write to the control register, so we can write 1, 2, 3, 4 directly to the register as a whole. That's okay. That can be nice. Read the status register register as a whole. Okay, now I'm not using addresses anymore. But that's not that great because those registers also have fields. So we'd really like to be able to do that on an individual level. So let's drill into that. We can do that. We can drill into that next layer. Notice on line 19, that is actually that original abstraction that I pointed out. That's changing that mode field. And what that's actually doing is the change command does a read operation of the register, modifies it, and then writes it back. And it's very deterministic in terms of like you know that's happening every time. Similarly, the next one down, we're reading the default field. Well, we need to read the register, and then we get the field value. Okay, but that's a little inefficient. I don't want to have to do a whole register access every time I want to touch one field. So let's think about how would we do that in Python that feels correct. Well, we can use these context managers. So context managers are really great. So I can, line 22 through 24, that's, I want to actually do a read modify write on that register as a whole. And maybe I want to manipulate a few things. So here I'm getting change fields. When I enter that, it does the read. I can manipulate it. I can increment, decrement them, do whatever I want in there. And then once it exits that block, then I write back. Similarly, we have read does require a context manager, but read fields returns an object that has members on there. So really nice and intuitive. Next thing is arrays, hierarchy. That all kind of works the way you'd expect. You can iterate over stuff, so I'm not going to dwell too much on that. Hardware I/O implementations, I have two so far out of the box. You can directly map to stuff on the device, OpenOCD through JTAG, that's what I mentioned before. It's pretty easy to extend your own. So you basically extend this class and just fill in the details and tell it what to do. So great. Why am I making yet another one? There's a bunch of them already out there. There's a few there's one that does PyUVM. There's another Python-based RAL generator. What's so special about this one? It's scaling. So I'm making a really bold claim here. O of 1 import time and O of 1 construction. Most RAL generators out there that I've encountered in Python are code generators. They will take a massive design and transcribe that into a massive Python file or a collection of massive Python files. They take forever to do the import. When you call the constructor, it sits there, chews up some memory, and allocates a bunch of stuff in memory. And it's just not nice to use sometimes. If you're for small designs, it's totally fine. But anecdotally, I worked with a design that was roughly 100,000 registers, or on that order of magnitude, and it was like importing it and constructing the RAL was like on the order of minutes of just like sitting there for it to load, which is a little ridiculous, especially if you're bringing up an SoC and you just want to like peek and poke 5 registers. So PyRAL takes a little bit of a different approach. It doesn't generate Python. It actually does, it generates a database. And from that, as you query and explore the design, whether you're iterating over an array or drilling down into the hierarchy, it creates objects dynamically. So scales really nicely. But wait, if it's generating things dynamically, like how the heck are we going to do type checking? How is autocomplete going to work? Like, don't worry, it works. So what I do is, along with the database, it also generates a PYI file. So that's a type stubs file, which basically lies to your IDE and tells it, no, these things exist, it's okay. And it works really nicely. Like you can see here, I'm entering into that context block, I get the field names, and everything just kind of works the way you think it should, as if you're manipulating real Python. So it's very seamless, it's really nice to use. Another thing you can do is vertical reuse. So with a monolithic one, with a monolithic RAL, it's a little cumbersome to reuse components. So an example, if we have 2 separate register files, and then we stitch them together in an SoC, you get something like this. You get this monolithic design, and this is pretty small, so it doesn't really make too much sense to do vertical reuse, but you can see that that's may not be able to scale too well if you have a large SoC and you'll have a bunch of different subsystems with tests. But instead, you can graft stuff. So this is a pretty unique feature of this tool. Down here, I generate the two subcomponents, and then at the top level, I say, okay, well, if you encounter this RDL type, graft it using this Python import, relative Python import, and then you can kind of stitch your design together into a larger system. And that looks like this. You have two separate RALs generated on the side, and then the top level kind of knows where to find its partners. So that's it for PeakRDL-PyRAL. If you're new to PeakRDL, know that there's a lot of tools out there. So I have a register file generator for system Verilog. There's an HTML generator for documentation, which I've then rolled into a Sphinx plugin for Sphinx docs. You can generate C headers if you realize Python's a little too slow for your application. That's fine. That's fine. UVM for testing. IPExact if you need to interchange with IP vendors. And then there's a bunch of third-party extensions that people in the community have put together. Some people here in the room have worked with these, and yeah, the list goes on. So if you want to get involved in PeakRDL, make a plugin, play around with it. It's loads of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, so PeakRDL user myself, I say it's a very good tool, and it's an excellent example of how good tooling can, we don't only need a standard, you need good tooling around it to be able to use the standard. And no one should ever write their own thing anymore.
Definitely
not. This is great. Thank you very much. It's tastefully made, and I have high expectations for your work, and it's nice to see them. This is a problem that you may... Not a fair question. Once you start exporting your control stack, your register definitions across a network, you start running the risk that your bitstream or whatever it is you're running on the device and your version of the register tree running on your host PC that might be controlling it desynchronize. How does that make sense?
Yeah.
How do you typically approach that?
Fear, and I avoid it. I don't know.
Fear and loathing, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's more of an organizational problem where you just need to make sure you're deploying your assets together. If it's a bit stream that goes along with a RAL, you could bundle that as part of your build process so your collateral is kind of co-located. But without knowing specifics of how you get into that situation, it's hard to give you a... Yeah.
Very cool. So Pink implements something kind of similar to this, re-implements something kind of similar to this. I'm not sure if you've used Pink. Do you have any idea of how that could fit?
I've not used Pink, so
okay.
Let's chat after that.
Okay, let's chat, yeah.
All right, then I say we thank the speaker once again.
Thank you.